First contact at Outpost Delta. The warning klaxons aboard Outpost Delta pierced Commander Sarah Chen's meditation hour, their shrill cry shattering the artificial peace of her quarters. Her neural implant flashed urgent red across her vision. Unknown vessel APPROHing. An human configuration. In the 15 years since humanity had established its first deep space outposts, they'd found plenty of evidence of alien life, microscopic organisms, ancient ruins, and tantalizing radio signals, but never a living, spacefaring civilization. Until now. Chen reached the command center in record time, her bare feet silent against the station's metallic floors. Lieutenant Rodriguez, her sensor officer, looked up with wide eyes. "Commander, the vessel just dropped out of FTL, at the edge of our defense grid. It's bleeding radiation." The main display showed a ship unlike anything in humanity's database, where human vessels favored utilitarian designs, all sharp angles and practical armor plating. This craft seemed almost organic. Its silver-blue hull rippled like liquid metal, despite clear signs of devastating damage along its port side. "Life signs," Chen demanded, strapping herself into the command chair. "Confirmed, but erratic. Their power core is highly unstable, Commander. At this rate, they'll experience catastrophic failure in less than 30 minutes. Chen's mind raced. First contact protocols were clear: maintain distance, establish communication, and wait for instructions from Earth. But that ship wouldn't last 30 minutes, let alone the 6 hours it would take for a response from command. "Open all frequencies," she ordered. "Universal greeting package, full broadcast." The package, humanity's carefully crafted introduction containing mathematical constants, basic scientific principles, and simple pictographic messages, streamed out toward the alien vessel. Seconds stretched into minutes as they waited for a response. "Commander," Rodriguez's voice cracked. "They're transmitting. I think it's a response, but..." The alien transmission filled their screens, not in any recognized format, but in crude modifications of humanity's own greeting. The mathematical sequences were played back, but altered, urgent. Through the visual feed, they could see beings moving inside the damaged vessel. Tall, elegant creatures with iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors with their movements. "They're not just responding," Chen realized. "They're asking for help." Rodriguez, run a full structural analysis. Harrison, begin emergency docking procedures. And someone get me a translator matrix running on their communications. Commander, her XO, David Harrison, stepped closer, lowering his voice. "First contact protocols. We'll get that crew killed." Chen cut him off. "We're an outpost of humanity, David. What we do here, how we respond to this situation, will define our species in their eyes. I'm not going to let their first impression of humanity be our backs as we watch them die." The next 20 minutes were organized chaos. As the alien ship limped toward their docking bay, Chen's crew worked frantically to prepare. Medical teams studied the alien biosigns they could detect. Engineering crews modified atmospheric seals to accommodate the vessel's unusual design, and security teams stood ready, alert but not aggressive. When the airlock finally cycled, Chen stood at the front of the welcoming party. The inner doors parted with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and humanity had its first true encounter with alien life. The beings that emerged were both beautiful and terrifying. Nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies seemed to flow rather than walk, skin shifting through patterns of bioluminescence that Chen's xenobiologists would later theorize was a form of communication. But it was their eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle, that caught her attention. In them, she saw something unmistakably familiar: fear. The leader of the group stepped forward, its skin pulsing with urgent patterns. Behind it, another alien was being supported by 2 others, clearly injured. The translator matrix hummed, processing their bioluminescent communications. "Please." The translation was rough. but the desperation came through clearly. "We seek sanctuary. They are coming. The harvesters are coming." Chen stepped forward, keeping her hands visible in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "You are safe here," she said firmly, watching the matrix translate her words into patterns of light. "We will help you." The alien leader's skin rippled with what the matrix tentatively identified as relief, but the patterns quickly shifted to urgent red pulses. "No time," it communicated. "Your people must know. The harvesters, they consume entire civilizations. We thought we were alone in fighting them. We have been running for so long." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. "Tell me everything," she said, already knowing that her decision to violate first contact protocols would prove to be the least of humanity's concerns. "Tell me about these harvesters." As the alien began to share its tale, emergency alerts were already racing toward Earth at light speed. Humanity had hoped its first contact with alien life would be peaceful. Instead, they were about to learn that the galaxy was far more dangerous than they had imagined, and that they had just been drawn into a war for survival that had been raging for centuries. Commander Chen looked at the injured aliens, at her crew's faces mixed with fear and determination, and knew that everything would change from this moment forward. Humanity had just been thrust onto a much larger stage, ready or not. And somewhere out in the darkness of space, something called the Harvesters was coming. The shadow in deep space. The holographic display in Outpost Delta's command center showed a sight that made Commander Chen's blood run cold. The Lumini refugees, as their alien guests called themselves, had shared their sensor data, and now everyone could see what they were running from. The harvester vessel defied conventional physics. Nearly 5 kilometers in length, its surface seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating a void in space that sensors struggled to track. But most disturbing were the tendrils of dark energy that occasionally pulsed along its hull, reaching out into space like hungry fingers. "Their technology is beyond anything we've encountered," explained Sentinel Vex, the Lumini leader, its skin flickering with patterns of deep blue concern. The translator matrix had improved over the past week, learning to interpret their bioluminescent language with greater accuracy. "They don't just destroy civilizations, they consume them. Technology, knowledge, even the very essence of species they encounter." Lieutenant Rodriguez cursed softly as new data scrolled across his screen. "Commander, long-range sensors are picking up gravitational distortions. 3 more signatures, same configuration as the vessel in the Lumini data." Chen's mind raced. 4 harvester vessels, each capable of destroying entire civilizations, were heading toward human space. The nearest reinforcements were weeks away, and evacuation would take too long. She looked at Sentinel Vex, whose patterns had shifted to a color she'd never seen before. "You recognize those energy signatures," she said. It wasn't a question. The Lumini's skin rippled with what the Matrix translated as grim confirmation. "This is not a random encounter, Commander. The Harvesters, they're hunting us. We led them here. To you. We didn't mean." "No time for guilt." Chen cut them off. "We need options. Tell me everything you know about their weaknesses." What followed was a crash course in fighting an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. The Harvesters weren't just powerful. They were patient, methodical, and terrifyingly intelligent. Their ships could absorb energy weapons, adapt to conventional tactics, and tear through the strongest known shields. But as Chen listened to the Lumini's account of previous encounters, a pattern began to emerge. The Harvesters were sophisticated, yes, but also rigid. They expected species to behave in predictable ways, to either fight head-on or flee. What they didn't expect was innovation. "Lieutenant Harrison," Chen called out, a plan forming in her mind. "Those mining charges we were supposed to dispose of last month, do we still have them?" Harrison nodded slowly, realization dawning on his face. "The unstable ones. Engineering said they were too dangerous to use. Too unpredictable." "Exactly. Chen's lips curved into a smile that would have worried her superiors back on Earth. Sentinel Vex, you said the harvesters adapt to energy weapons by analyzing and matching frequencies, correct? The Lumini's skin flickered with confusion, then understanding. Yes, but these mining charges, they're unstable. Very. Chen turned to her crew. The harvesters expect sophisticated weapons, organized resistance, so let's give them something else entirely. Something crude, chaotic, and very human. Over the next 12 hours, Outpost Delta transformed from a scientific research station into a makeshift fortress. The unstable mining charges were modified with debris from the Lumini ship, creating devices that even their inventors couldn't predict. Maintenance drones were reprogrammed with deliberately erratic patterns, designed to confuse the harvesters' analytical systems. But Chen's masterstroke came from an unexpected source: the station's waste recycling system. If they absorb energy, she explained to her bewildered crew, let's give them something they can't process. Something so fundamentally chaotic it overloads their adaptation protocols. As the harvester ships drew closer, Chen stood on the command deck, watching her people work alongside the Lumini with growing pride. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for generations, imagining grand diplomatic exchanges or technological revelations. Instead, they got this: a desperate last stand alongside alien refugees, armed with mining explosives and sewage. They're entering weapons range, Rodriguez reported, his voice steady despite the fear they all felt. Chen straightened in her command chair. Send the message to Earth. Tell them everything we've learned. And then, she looked at her crew, human and Lumini alike. Let's show these harvesters why they should have stayed in deep space. The first harvester vessel emerged from the darkness like a nightmare-given form, its tendrils reaching toward the station. But as it approached, it encountered not the organized resistance it expected, but a chaos it could never have prepared for. The battle for Outpost Delta was about to begin, and with it, humanity's first steps into a war that would reshape the galaxy. Chaos theory. Launch the first wave, Chen ordered, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. Around her, humans and Lumini worked in perfect synchronization, their previous differences forgotten in the face of annihilation. The station's external cameras showed the harvester vessels approaching in perfect formation, their dark hulls seeming to bend space itself. They moved with mechanical precision, every action calculated and measured. That would be their first mistake. Deploying mining charges, Harrison announced. The modified explosives tumbled through space, their trajectories deliberately erratic. The harvester ships didn't even attempt to evade. Why should they fear such primitive weapons? The first detonation caught everyone by surprise. The unstable charges, combined with fragments of Lumini technology, created reaction chains that defied conventional physics. Waves of energy rippled across the void, not in the orderly patterns the harvesters were designed to absorb, but in chaotic, unpredictable bursts. Energy absorption rates fluctuating, Rodriguez reported, excitement creeping into his voice. They're trying to adapt, but the patterns are too random. On the main screen, they watched as the lead harvester ship's tendrils writhed, attempting to process the chaos being thrown at it. Its surface rippled like disturbed water, dark energy patterns disrupted by the primitive but effective assault. But the harvesters hadn't survived for millennia by being easily defeated. The second and third vessels moved forward, their own tendrils extending to support their damaged companion. The fourth began a wide arc, clearly intending to flank the station. They're learning, Sentinel Vex observed, its skin pulsing with tactical patterns, adapting their formation to. Perfect, Chen interrupted, a fierce grin spreading across her face. Initiate protocol garbage. The Lumini's confusion was visible in their color patterns, but the human crew moved with practiced precision. Deep within the station, recycling systems that had been modified over the past 12 hours roared to life. What emerged wasn't waste in any conventional sense. It was a carefully engineered soup of organic and synthetic materials, flash-frozen into projectiles and launched in carefully calculated patterns. The Harvester's sensors, designed to detect and analyze sophisticated weapons, struggled to make sense of what they were detecting. Were these weapons debris? The massive ships actually paused in their advance, their AI cores attempting to categorize and counter this unprecedented attack. That moment of hesitation was all Chen needed. Now, Harrison, hit them with everything. The remaining mining charges detonated in sequence, their explosions amplified by the chemical chaos of the frozen waste. The reactions created cascading waves of energy that the Harvesters couldn't process fast enough. Their attempts to absorb and adapt only made things worse, as their systems tried to find patterns in what was essentially randomized destruction. The lead vessel's hull began to crack, dark energy bleeding into space in impossible patterns. The other ships moved to protect it, but they too were caught in the maelstrom of unpredictable reactions. "Commander," Rodriguez called out, his voice tense with disbelief, "the lead ship's core is destabilizing. Their adaptive protocols are. They're trying to adapt to each other's adaptations." Chen watched as the Harvester vessels, for perhaps the first time in their ancient existence, faced something they couldn't categorize and control. Their own complexity was being used against them, their sophisticated systems trapped in a feedback loop of trying to counter weapons that followed no logic they could comprehend. The first explosion started as a pinpoint of light in the lead vessel's hull. Within seconds, it blossomed into a sphere of pure chaos. The ship's own energy containment systems turned against it. The blast caught two of its companions in the radius, their hulls warping as their adaptive protocols failed catastrophically. The fourth vessel, perhaps displaying the first sign of actual intelligence they'd seen from the Harvesters, began to retreat. Its surface rippled with what almost looked like fear. "Shall we pursue?" Harrison asked, his hand hovering over the launch controls for their remaining charges. Chen watched the surviving Harvester ship flee, considering. They had achieved the impossible. They had not only survived an encounter with humanity's newest nightmare, but had actually driven them back. Yet something told her this victory, while significant, was only the beginning. "Let it go," she ordered finally. "Let it take word back to whatever passes for its leaders. Let them know that humanity doesn't play by their rules." As the adrenaline of battle faded, Chen looked around her command center. Humans and Lumini stood together, united in victory and survival. The station was damaged, their resources depleted, but they had done what no other species had managed in recent memory. They had fought the Harvesters and won. Sentinel Vex approached her, its skin glowing with what the Matrix translated as a complex mixture of gratitude, admiration, and concern. "You have done the impossible, Commander. But you must know, they will return. And next time, they will be prepared for this." Chen nodded, already composing her report to Earth Command in her mind. "Let them come," she said quietly. "We'll have some new surprises waiting. Though I admit, we might need to come up with something more dignified than protocol garbage for the history books." Ripples of war. The news of Outpost Delta's victory spread across human space at the speed of light. Within days, Earth's major powers had convened an emergency session of the United Earth Council. Commander Chen found herself addressing the assembled leaders via quantum link, her image projected into the Grand Chamber in Geneva while she remained at her post. "The Harvesters represent a threat unlike anything humanity has encountered," she explained, her voice echoing through the chamber. "But they're not invincible. We've proven that." The council chamber erupted in debate. Some leaders called for immediate military mobilization, others for diplomatic attempts to contact the Harvesters. A few even suggested abandoning the outer colonies entirely. Admiral Zhang, head of Earth's Space Defense Force, raised his hand for silence. "Commander Chen," he said, his weathered face grave, "your tactical innovation is commendable. But can we replicate these results? The element of surprise is gone now." Before Chen could respond, her feed was interrupted by new signals, dozens of them, coming from deep space. The Lumini weren't the only ones who had noticed humanity's victory. Ships began arriving at Outpost Delta, vessels of different designs, carrying species that had been hiding from the harvesters for generations. They came not just seeking refuge, but offering alliance. The impossible victory of a primitive outpost had given them something they'd lost long ago: hope. "We don't need to replicate our tactics," Chen told the council, gesturing to the holographic displays showing the growing fleet of alien vessels around her station. "We need to innovate, create new ones. The harvesters adapt to patterns, so we'll be what they never expect: unpredictable." Over the next few weeks, Outpost Delta transformed. Human engineers worked alongside alien technicians, combining technologies in ways neither species had imagined. The Lumini's photonic crystals were integrated into Earth's missile guidance systems. The Zerkath, a species of silicon-based beings, showed them how to modify their shields to resist the harvesters' energy-draining attacks. But it was the arrival of the Myriad that changed everything. A collective consciousness of microscopic organisms. They had survived a harvester attack by being too small to detect. Their understanding of quantum mechanics at the smallest scale opened new possibilities for human scientists. Chen watched from her command center as the first prototype of their combined technology took shape. It looked almost crude, a mix of human industrial design, Lumini crystalline structures, and Zerkath mineral composites, all suffused with myriad quantum matrices. "The harvesters expect evolution to be linear," explained Dr. Patel, her chief scientist, practically bouncing with excitement, each species developing along predictable paths. "But this," she gestured to the prototype, "this is technological cross-pollination. They won't be able to predict what we'll do because we're not following any single species development path." But time was running out. Long-range sensors detected massive harvester fleets mobilizing, far larger than anything the Lumini had described. The enemy wasn't just sending ships now. They were coming to exterminate a genuine threat. "They're afraid," Sentinel Vex observed, its skin patterns showing a mix of fear and satisfaction. For the first time in millennia, the harvesters face something they don't understand. Chen studied the tactical displays, watching the enemy fleet's movements. The harvesters were methodical, thorough. They would come prepared for both the crude tactics that had worked before and the advanced technologies they usually faced. But they still fought in absolutes, in logical progressions. "Then let's give them more to fear," she said, turning to her now remarkably diverse crew. "Humanity has a long history of taking different ideas, smashing them together, and seeing what works, usually while breaking all the rules about what should work." She pulled up the design schematics for their new hybrid weapons and defenses. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore," she continued. "We're fighting for every species that's ever been hunted by these machines, and we're going to do it our way, the human way." The assembled aliens watched as she outlined her plan. It was audacious, probably insane by most species standards. It involved using technology in ways it was never designed for, combining strategies that should be mutually exclusive, and basically throwing the entire handbook of conventional space warfare out the airlock. In other words, it was perfectly human. As her crew, human and alien alike, dispersed to begin preparations, Chen received a private message from Earth Command. They had reviewed her previous battle footage and her new proposals. Their response was brief but clear: full authority granted. Show them why humanity never learned to play by the rules. Defiance. 3 months after the first battle of Outpost Delta, the Harvester Armada arrived. Their fleet darkened the stars. Over 300 vessels, each one larger and more powerful than those they'd faced before. But they found not a single station waiting for them, but a combined fleet of human and alien ships, their designs a wild fusion of technologies that had never been meant to work together. Commander Chen, now Fleet Captain Chen, stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiance, humanity's first hybrid warship. Like the station where this all began, her crew was a mix of species united by a common purpose. They're approaching in standard attack formation, reported Rodriguez, still at her side after all this time. Just as arrogant as ever. Good, Chen smiled. The Harvester's greatest weakness remained their rigid thinking. Signal the fleet. Operation Pandora is go. The first wave of hybrid ships moved forward, their hulls gleaming with lumini crystals. They looked like easy targets, smaller than the Harvester vessels. With minimal visible weapons, the enemy fleet responded exactly as expected, extending their energy-draining tendrils. But these weren't the same ships they'd faced before. As the dark energy reached for them, the lumini crystals activated, not fighting the drain but redirecting it through pathways designed by the myriad consciousness. The energy flowed through quantum circuits and into specially designed storage systems created by human engineers. Energy capture at 80% and rising, announced the Zerkath engineering chief, their crystalline form vibrating with excitement. The Harvesters are literally charging our weapons for us. The enemy fleet faltered, their most basic attack turned against them. But Chen knew they would adapt quickly. That's why it was only the first part of the plan. Launch the mosquitoes, she ordered. From the larger ships, swarms of tiny vessels emerged, each one barely larger than a human fighter, but built with myriad quantum technology. They were too small for the Harvester's main weapons to target effectively, and too numerous to track all at once. The mosquitoes darted between the massive enemy ships, attaching themselves to their hulls. Each one carried a payload of modified mining charges, similar to those used in the first battle, but now enhanced with alien technology. Detonation in 3, 2, 1. The explosions weren't large, but they didn't need to be. The quantum-enhanced charges created microscopic ruptures in the Harvester's supposedly impenetrable hulls. Through these tiny breaches, the myriad consciousness began to infiltrate their systems. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Harvester ships began to move erratically, their perfect formation breaking apart as the myriad disrupted their control systems. Some fired on their own allies, their targeting systems corrupted by the microscopic invaders. Phase 2, Chen commanded. Show them what humanity does best. The main fleet moved forward, each ship employing tactics that should have been impossible. Human warships used lumini crystal arrays to bend their energy signatures, appearing to be in multiple places at once. Zerkath vessels phased through enemy fire using quantum tunneling techniques developed by Earth scientists. And through it all, the myriad continued their work, turning the Harvester's own complexity against them. But the enemy was far from defeated. As their front lines collapsed into chaos, the rear vessels began to adapt, their hulls shifting to seal themselves against the myriad infection. Energy beams of impossible power lashed out, destroying several Allied ships in seconds. They're learning, Sentinel Vex warned, its patterns showing urgent concern, adapting faster than we anticipated. Chen nodded grimly. They always do. That's why we have one last surprise. She opened a channel to all ships, all vessels. Initiate Protocol Ultimate Chaos. Every ship in the Allied fleet suddenly changed tactics, but not in any coordinated way. Each captain had been given different instructions, different technologies, different approaches. Some charged forward with shields blazing, others hung back to snipe at range. Some launched conventional torpedoes, while others employed exotic alien weapons. The Harvester's adaptive algorithms, designed to recognize and counter patterns, were overwhelmed by the sheer variety of attacks. Each time they developed a defense against one approach, they faced 3 more they'd never seen before. Their command and control is fragmenting, Rodriguez reported. The myriad report their group consciousness is starting to break down. They can't process this many variables at once. Chen watched as the mighty Harvester fleet began to tear itself apart. Ships fired on their own allies, unable to distinguish friend from foe. Others attempted to retreat, only to be caught in the crossfire of their own side's desperate attempts to restore order. In the end, it wasn't a single decisive blow that won the battle. It was the accumulated chaos of countless innovative approaches, the combination of technologies that should never have worked together, and the unpredictability that had always been humanity's greatest strength. As the last harvester ships fled or fell silent, Chen looked around at her crew, human, Lumini, Zerkath, and others. Each species had contributed something unique, but it was humanity's willingness to break every rule, to try the impossible, that had brought them together and given them victory. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "The harvesters are defeated. And let them know." She smiled, thinking of how this all began at a small research station, that humanity's first galactic war was won not with superior technology or overwhelming force, but with garbage, mining charges, and pure human stubbornness. The celebration that erupted on the bridge was unlike any in human history. A chorus of cheers in multiple languages, bioluminescent displays of joy, and crystalline harmonics of victory. It was beautiful, chaotic, and perfectly appropriate. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as conquerors or victims, but as innovators and unifiers. The species that never played by the rules had just rewritten them for everyone.